Greetings everybody, my name is Tommy the Game Master and welcome again to my channel. After I played through Kingdom Hearts 3, I took a break from the franchise and kind of detoxed a bit. A lot of people were complaining about how Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't that great a game, and my thoughts on the overall game were a bit mixed. So I didn't jump right into the DLC package when it first came out about a year ago, but rather I waited for it to be on a sale a few months later on the PS4 store, and then I decided to jump into it, but only after finding the time to play through the proper game again. It was a good thing too, because I caught a few things that the game was actually building up to in the main game storyline, like Sora telling Jack Sparrow, due to Will's sacrifice to stop Davy Jones, they only have one more day together, and Jack saying one day is plenty if your hearts are connected. Kind of ironic considering what happens to Sora after Kingdom Hearts 3. At any rate, is it worth getting the DLC, and does it make the story any better? And does it iron out any of the gameplay flaws that people found in the original Kingdom Hearts 3? Yes, no? Let's talk about Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind DLC. Like the final mix of Kingdom Hearts 2, the Remind DLC does bring us a lot of new story elements. Unlike Kingdom Hearts 2, though, where most of them were somewhat seamlessly put in together with the main game and quest, with the exception of a few new scenes that were added into Hollow Bastion that did slow the game and story down a bit, but for the most part they were put in there pretty seamlessly. Here, they're kind of this one new mode that you get in the download menu that you have to access. So what do you get? Well, things like Xigbar and Luxart here talking about their own agendas, which are never made clear in the main game or in the DLC, as well as this other opening story scene that happens during the time of Dream Drop Distance, making things even more confusing. After about 15 minutes of exposition, and I'm not kidding, it takes 15 minutes for the DLC to actually start, it finally does start. Sora returns to the final world to ask Chirithy here for help. Chirithy says he can use the power of waking one more time to restore Kairi's heart and to have history bend to his will. But there is a price. If he does this, then he too will be banished from this reality and all of his power stripped away forever, keeping him from the same friends he is willing to sacrifice himself to save. Sora agrees to the idea, and Chirithy tells him in order to save his friends, he will have to jump from heart to heart, starting with the timeline he and his friends died to the new one he created when he went back in time after defeating the Lich to rescue his friends in the first place. From there, it's basically replaying the final level with a few cutscenes to help you figure out what's going on. Why did the Lingering Will show up to help protect the gang in the second timeline? Because Naminé called out to it. How did Sora remember Xion again? Because the other Sora found her heart and returned it to her. How did Roxas just pop out of nowhere? Yes, in this new timeline, Sora again finds his heart and restores it. Again, the fights are virtually the same. I didn't mind because I did a little post-game grinding, so being 20 to 30 levels higher meant pretty much all the bosses fell in minutes flat. After you beat all the bosses, the new timeline Sora finally finds himself in Scala ad Kalam several minutes earlier than his original counterpart. There you get to actually explore this world like a stage and solve puzzles to help find Kairi and bind her heart back together. And after that, the boss of the DLC appears, and it's basically the 13 clones you fought in the first battle against Xehanort in the main game, returning to annoy Mickey and the gang, who are still in the Keyblade Graveyard. Second, Sora and Kairi show up to lend a hand, and after beating the final version of Xehanort's clone, they decide to disappear together so they can spend the remaining time Sora has together with each other. Basically, all these ending scenes from the game shows that Sora and Kairi were there. Reason why Chirithy reunited with Vin? Because of Sora pushing him back into Vin's view. Naminé's return? Sora was there to unlock the heart, etc., etc. Overall, I thought the new elements did solve a few of the plot holes well enough, but I can't say it's well written. Kingdom Hearts was never Shakespeare to begin with, but this is still a little weak. It was more of a way of trying to explain away the plot holes rather than giving fulfilling answers. but there are one or two lines that are hidden in there that are clever enough to show that this was the way the story was meant to happen. Is it the most moving or well-written story in JRPG history? Well, no. Is it the typical junk food candy store that is presented in Kingdom Hearts? Yes, and for the most part I loved it. Now for the gameplay. Yeah, I've started before the main story. It's pretty much the last area again with a few new extra things added. Fighting the organization members again, pretty much exactly the same way as before. Obviously you get to choose a new character to play as. Well, it's fun to play with these characters and abilities. Sora is always the strongest and the best choice to deal with them, especially if you did any grinding post-game. Picking Sora, who is OP even if you haven't grinded, is still just so super easy that oftentimes I just went with him because I didn't see the point of choosing the other guy. The game does stop and slow down a bit once you reach Scala Atollam, which I found to be an interesting world and was glad to be able to explore it. Finding Kairi's heart helps you understand this world. It's basically some sort of reincarnation of Daybreak Town, for instance. Again, this area is not bad, but afterwards it's just more boss battles. This one between the 6 other Guardians of Light and Xehanort's clones that plays out more like a punch-out battle, which was interesting enough, and the final battle with Sora and Kairi was about as enjoyable as the actual final battle against the big guy himself in the main game. Getting through the story parts added very little challenges or changes to the first game. It's for the most part more of the same I found with the DLC. However, after the story mode comes another mode where you get to go fight hard as hell data versions. And I'm not going to lie, I didn't get very far before getting my butt whooped. Again, I like the challenge, and again, I hope it makes me think on my feet. Only problem with this here is, unlike Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, where I can just pop back into the world at large and level up and find new ways to prepare for these battles, here I am stuck. Sure, I can always load the game from my original data back up, but then I have to go through the whole remind to get back to this area, rather than letting me get out to simply level up and explore. This makes me want to do this even less, and I'm thinking about probably skipping these challenges. I should mention there is a mode that lets you create your own photographs, and yeah, the Kingdom Hearts community uses it as a meme maker. Oh, and one more thing I think I should mentioning, and that's the new voice of Xehanort. In the main quest, he was voiced by Rutger Hauer, who actually passed away a few months before Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind was released, and a few months after Kingdom Hearts 3 was released, meaning they had to change Xehanort's voice again. This time they changed it to Christopher, I was frozen today, Lloyd, and oh my god, does he just knock it out of the park. Lloyd should have been their first pick to replace Leonard Nimoy. No offense to Hauer's performance, I actually like how he spoke slower and gave Xehanort a bit of an accent, made him feel more like an ancient evil. But when you consider that he's taking over for Nimoy, who didn't give the character an accent and talked a lot faster and with more energy, it's a bit of disconnect that this is supposed to be the same character with the same intention. Lloyd, although no sound alike to Leonard Nimoy, gives the character the right energy and the right emotion and the right energy to make it feel more like a continuation of the character, and I just love Lloyd's performance. Here, check out these two lines for comparison.
Behold, this town. Once a seat of power for all Keyblade wielders. It is the nexus from which all worlds spring.
Behold this town. Once a seat of power for all Keyblade wielders. It is the nexus from which all worlds spring.
Would I recommend the DLC for $30? No, not really. It's pretty much just retreading the final areas of Kingdom Hearts 3, which I thought got too obnoxious with its story and its dialogue towards the end of the game. Don't get me wrong, I like the extra details and stuff, but there's not much new here to really explore. There is some good stuff towards the end, but you have to go through so much retread to reach it. The data battles themselves, I do enjoy the fact that they have these hard as heck boss fights. I don't like the fact that I can't easily access them. In Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, I got stuck in the data battles. I figured out what I needed to do. I went out, I leveled up a drive, or I leveled up Sora, came back, and I did the battles again. And sometimes it took me a time or two, but I had that option. They got rid of that for these boss battles, and it just kind of makes me feel like I'm stuck if I want to try to proceed further with that mode. So that was a disappointment. The only really great thing I can say about this is them bringing Christopher Lloyd on for Xehanort's voice. He really does knock it out of the park, but I just don't see this being $30. At $15 to $20, maybe if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, but I don't see this being $30 worth of content. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've played through Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, feel free to leave a comment down below on what your thoughts of the game were. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching my video.
No more.